Hello, Joko here, and we're going to talk about project initiation. This is the third part for the project management class in Budi Luhur University. So, in this short video, I'm going to talk about how to understand the steps corresponding to project initiation, further understand the process and knowledge area within initialization. Let's start with initiating the project. There are 6 process groups here shown in the picture for project management, from originating, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and last but not least, closing. Now we're going to talk about this one, initiating. There are 4 big steps to project initiation, which is project initiation process to create project charter, identify the project stakeholder, we need to do a kickoff meeting, and planning the preparation. Let's talk about the first, project initiation knowledge area. This process performed to define a new phase of existing project by obtaining authorization. So the key part here is authorization, whether we are going to do it or not, to start the project or the phase. There are a few knowledge areas that connected to the process, which is project integration management knowledge area. And from this knowledge area, we're going to do a process called develop the project charter. And the second knowledge area is project stakeholders management. In this knowledge area, the process that we're going to do is identify the stakeholder. Let's talk about the project charter. Project charter process have inputs, tools and techniques to do it, and the outputs. The output itself is the project charter, a document. The input that we're going to use as the data in the project charter consists of project statement of works, business case, contracts, enterprise environmental factor, and organizational process assets. Using expert judgment from the project manager and the team, they will process this input to become output. So using this data, they're going to create a project charter. The project charter itself is a project project document that is formally recognized the existence of who authorized the project. So it consists of the definition, we'll talk about that later, and then in the end there's authorization, who authorized the project. And it provides the project manager with authority to apply organizational resources to the project activities. Now, key project stakeholders should sign or agree a project charter to acknowledge agreement on the need and intent of the project. When the project is performed under contract, then the signed contract will generally serve as the project charter. Project that uses third party, then you might do it in contract signed project, and the contract itself can be taken as a project charter. The project charter will address information of requirements that satisfies customers, sponsors, and other stakeholder needs, the business needs, and then the project purpose or justification, assigned project manager, who will be assigned for this project and what authority level, the summary milestone schedule, the stakeholder influences, the functional organization and their participation, organization, environmental and external assumption and constraint, business case justifying the project, ROI is return of investment, and the summary budget. Project charter constraints and assumptions. Constraints is factor that will limit the project management team's option. It can be vary from the resource that are needed to finish the project, environmental impacts, or laws that needs to be addressed and adhered to. So the constraint just lists the factor that will limit the project management. And then the assumption is the factors that for planning purposes will be considered to be true, real, or certain. The example of this is foreign exchange rate. Okay, now project charter inputs. From the project charter inputs, we have project statement of work. Description of the product and deliverables of the project will indicate the business needs, the product scope, the requirements, characteristic, and strategic plan. This project statement of work is a narrative description of the product or service that to be delivered by the project. And it identifies the business needs, it documents the project scope, and show that the project is aligned with organization strategic planning. This statement of work will be used as input of the project charter. The second input is business case. We already talked about this business case in previous meeting. It's information from the business standpoint to determine whether to do or do not do the project, whether it's worth investing or not. And then, of course, the contract or the service level agreement. Fourth is enterprise environmental factor, which is example is for the culture and structure. For every organization, there's a difference. The industry standard, the human resource, information system, and so on. The fifth is organizational process asset, the process, procedures, standard, templates, etc. for conducting the work, and the corporate knowledge base. Now, the tools and techniques that being used to process those inputs is expert judgment. It can be an internal expert from within the organization or external expert with using consultant, professional association, industry groups, and etc. And of course, there's facilitation techniques. Usually we have a meeting, and then discussion, and brainstorming, and so on. And output of the project initialization is the project charter, which includes the justification or the purpose, the project objective, which is measurable, the requirements, the high-level requirements, not very detailed, assumption and constraint, project description and boundaries, the risks, the budget, the milestone, list of stakeholders, project approval requirements, assigned project manager, and the sponsor. So this is the excerpt of the output sample, the project title, project start date, who is the manager, the objective, the approach, roles and responsibility, and it's not mentioned or shown here is the information about the assumption, the risk, the budget, the milestone, and then after that there's the authorization from the stakeholder and the comments from the stakeholder if it needs to be. Now, for the second part, we're going to talk about identifying the project stakeholder. Identifying the project stakeholders, which can be customers, sponsors, team members, suppliers, labor unions, and so on, and documenting the relevant information that will influence the project success. To identify the project stakeholder, there are three parts, which is the input, tools and techniques, and the output. So the flow is like this. So after we have the project charter and have procurement documents, enterprise environment factor, organizational process asset, we're going to use this input with the ability of the project team using stakeholder analysis and expert judgment to create output of stakeholder register and stakeholder management strategies. The input is project charter. We already addressed it in previous slide. The procurement document is document that correlates to procure resource needed in project. The enterprise environment factor are the characteristic, ability, and limitation that the organization has, whether positive or negative impact for the project. And the organizational process asset contain physical and managerial assets that can be used to achieve the stakeholder identification process. Now, the stakeholder analysis is for collecting and analyzing information to determine the stakeholders. So we're going to classify the stakeholder into 4 power interest group. We can see it from this quadrant. So there are high or low interest and high or low power. This is the interest for the project. This is the power to determine or to affect the project. If the stakeholder is in low interest and low power, we just need to monitor them. And if the stakeholder is high interest but low power, we just need to keep them informed. If the stakeholder is low interest but high power, just keep them satisfied. And if the stakeholder is high interest with high power to the project, then we need to manage them closely. So we are categorizing the stakeholder into power interest group. The tools for stakeholder analysis is expert judgments, consisting of senior managers, expert consultant groups, and professionals. And usually to do the stakeholder analysis, we're going to do it in meetings. Now, this is the example of stakeholder analysis, communication analysis, and we can see in this column is the stakeholders and the document name and the document format and who is responsible or the contact person and when it's due. So for example, it's like this. The stakeholder of the project comes from customer management department, and they say, hey, I just want a monthly status report in hard copy. Okay. And another stakeholder may be from customer business staff. They only want monthly status report also with hard copy. Customer technical staff want it in email, and so on. But this is a different one. A training subcontractor want a training plan in hard copy. And the software subcontractor want software implementation plan via email and with specific dates. So different stakeholders within the project will need different document, and they want it in different interval or in different format. The output itself is the stakeholder management plan. The stakeholder management plan will show the name, role, the type, the understanding of the project, degree of influence, degree of relationship, or the bounding of the within project and stakeholder management. Stakeholder registers, still noted in the output, is containing all the details of the identified stakeholders. And the strategy managing the stakeholders will define the approach that will be used in managing the stakeholders, minimizing the impact to the project objective. Stakeholders management strategy identifies and documents approach to take in order to increase support and decrease negative impact of stakeholders throughout the life of the project. It should identify the key stakeholders along with the level of power and influence they have on the project. Then the stakeholder management strategies should document the strategies which will be used to manage stakeholders according to their power and interests in the project. So that covers up this third meeting. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have rudimentary information about project initiation. Thank you. Goodbye for now.